There is a point where time stops behaving the way it does for everyone else. Not because the clock freezes, but because the future disappears. When there is nothing left to wait for, nothing to work toward, time doesn't move forward anymore. It just keeps going. And that may be the most severe punishment we've ever created. Most people don't notice how much the future controls their life. It's always there in the background. A plan, a deadline, a visit, something coming next. Even on bad days, there's still a sense that time is leading somewhere. For someone serving life without parole, that structure collapses. There is no next chapter to prepare for. No milestone to count down to. The future doesn't arrive later, it simply stops being useful. Days still pass. Weeks still stack up, but they don't move toward anything. Time becomes a loop instead of a line. And once that realization sets in, the punishment isn't just confinement anymore. It's existing inside a present that never opens into anything else. And that's where the real shift begins. Most punishments, no matter how severe, have an endpoint. Even the harshest ones bring closure. There's a final moment where the sentence is complete and the story stops moving. Life without parole doesn't offer that. There is no final day to brace for, no release point where the suffering peaks and ends. The sentence isn't about intensity. It's about duration. Nothing explodes. Nothing resolves. The days don't build toward a climax. They stack on top of each other, identical and unbroken. What makes this punishment unsettling isn't what happens inside it, but the fact that nothing ever changes. And that endless continuation is where it starts to feel different from anything else. The system isn't designed to destroy someone all at once. There's no single breaking moment. No dramatic collapse. Instead, it works quietly, through repetition. The same rules, the same walls, the same schedule, repeated day after day, year after year. Over time, survival stops meaning resilience. It becomes adaptation to sameness. Choices shrink until they barely exist. Not because they're taken violently, but because there's no reason for them anymore. When nothing leads anywhere, deciding loses its purpose. And that slow erosion raises a question most people never consider. Once a sentence has no end, improvement stops being relevant. The system no longer needs to ask who a person is becoming, because becoming implies a future. And here, the future has been removed. What matters instead is control, stability, predictability. The goal isn't growth or correction, it's consistency. As long as the routine holds and the rules are followed, the system is satisfied. In this structure, identity fades into behavior. Not who someone is, but whether they comply. Change isn't measured, because change has nowhere to go. And that's where the punishment shifts from action to design. At first glance, life without parole seems like justice. It removes a dangerous person from society. But when you look closer, the question shifts. Is it really about justice, or is it something darker? This isn't a punishment meant to correct, heal, or even reform. It's a process of attrition, psychological erosion, a slow stripping away of hope, agency, and the very idea that the future could ever change. The system doesn't measure whether someone deserves redemption, it measures whether control can be maintained. The question isn't about what they've done or who they've become. It's about whether they can be held in place, forever. But that leaves us with an uncomfortable realization. Once someone is locked into life without parole, there's no longer a story to tell. No growth, no transformation. It's not about progression, but about maintenance, keeping the routine intact, keeping the walls secure, keeping everything as it was. The days blend into one another, indistinguishable. There's no breakthrough, no climax. Just the same cycle, the same schedule, repeating endlessly. It's not a life. It's a state of surviving in place, day after day, until survival itself becomes the only goal. This isn't about whether the person can change. It's about whether the system can keep them exactly as they are. And that never-ending repetition doesn't shock, doesn't surprise. It simply continues, until there's nothing else left but the quiet hum of endless maintenance. And that's where the discomfort truly begins. At this point, the crime has already been judged. The sentence has been handed down. The court's role is finished. What remains is something much harder to define. A punishment that never ends doesn't ask whether it works. It doesn't ask whether it's fair. It simply exists, stretching across decades with no final moment of reckoning. No point where the outcome is measured. So the question shifts away from the system and onto everyone else. Is this meant to correct behavior, protect society, or simply outlast the person inside it? Because once a sentence is permanent, that judgment no longer belongs to the court. It belongs to the people who accept it. Life without parole doesn't come with resolution. There's no final scene, no moment where the punishment feels complete. The sentence continues quietly, long after public attention fades. This isn't about sympathy or forgiveness. It's about design. A system that removes every future possibility doesn't need to explain itself, it only needs to function. And it does, day after day, without interruption. What lingers isn't the crime, which has already been judged, but the method of punishment that follows. One that never ends, never concludes, and never asks whether endurance was the goal all along. That question isn't answered by the courts. It's left with the people who choose not to look away.